I don't usually walk home late at night, but that evening I had no choice. My bike had broken down near my office and there were no cabs available. The last bus had already left, and I didn't want to bother anyone for a ride. It was just a 30-minute walk to my apartment. I figured I could handle that. It was colder than usual, the kind of cold that settles deep in your bones. The streets were unusually quiet too. No distant horns, no stray dogs barking, just my footsteps echoing against the empty buildings. The whole city seemed asleep, or maybe it was just me. I took the usual shortcut. It's a narrow street lined with old, crumbling houses. Most of them are abandoned, dark windows, broken fences. People say the street is cursed, but I never believed in all that. I just wanted to get home. About 10 minutes in, I first felt it. That sensation, like someone was watching me. You know the feeling, right? Like eyes boring into your back. I stopped and looked around. Nothing. Just the flickering streetlight and the distant hum of an electric pole. I shook it off and kept walking, but the feeling wouldn't leave. If anything, it got stronger. I glanced over my shoulder again. This time I saw him, a man. He was standing at the far end of the street, just where the light faded into darkness. His figure was hazy, like he didn't quite belong there. He was wearing something dark, maybe a coat, but I couldn't make out his face. And he wasn't moving, just standing. I don't know why, but my heart started pounding. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he lived around here. Maybe he was lost. But why was he just standing there? I picked up my pace. I didn't want to look back again, but I couldn't help it. Curiosity, or maybe fear, got the better of me. He was closer. Not walking, not running, just closer. I swear, I didn't hear a single footstep. No sound at all. But somehow he had moved. My stomach twisted. I wasn't the kind of guy who got scared easily, but there was something wrong about him. Something off. I forced myself to stay calm. Just keep walking, I told myself. Don't panic. But every few steps I glanced back, and each time, he was closer. By the time I reached the old railway bridge, he was barely 20 feet behind me, and I could finally see his face. Only there was no face. Where his face should have been, there was nothing. Just a blank, smooth surface. My legs felt weak. My mouth went dry. I don't know what I was thinking, but I ran, full speed. I didn't care how crazy I looked. I just needed to get away from him. I cut through an alley, hoping to lose him. The sound of my breath filled my ears and my legs ached, but I didn't stop. When I reached the next street, I dared to look back. Empty. He was gone. I laughed, nervously, shakily. I'm imagining things, I thought. I'm tired, that's all. I slowed down and tried to catch my breath. My apartment wasn't far, just a few more blocks. But then, I heard it. Footsteps. Not mine, his. Soft, slow, right behind me. I didn't want to turn around, but I did. And there he was, standing under a broken streetlight, still silent. I lost it. I sprinted the last stretch to my apartment, heart hammering so loudly I thought it might explode. I fumbled with my keys, half expecting to feel his cold hand grab me, but I made it inside, slammed the door, and locked it. Safe, or so I thought. I stayed up all night checking the window, listening for sounds, but nothing. By dawn, I convinced myself it was a weird, sleep-deprived hallucination, just a trick of the mind. The next day, I avoided the shortcut, took the long way home, full of traffic and noise. I felt better, normal, even. For a while, I thought it was over, but it wasn't. A week later, I found something on my doorstep, a single black shoe. It looked old, worn, like it had been walked in for years, and next to it, scrawled on the concrete in what looked like dirt or something darker, were 3 words. I found you. I moved out of that apartment the next month, but sometimes when I'm alone on a quiet street, I feel it again. That sensation, like someone's watching me. And when I turn around, I swear I still see him. I've never told anyone this story before, partly because I know how crazy it sounds, but mostly because I still don't understand what really happened. Even now, years later, I can't walk down an empty street at night without thinking about her. It happened when I was in college. I used to live in a small, rundown apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't the safest area, but it was cheap. And as a broke student, I couldn't be picky. Most nights I worked late at a cafe nearby and I always walked home alone. It never bothered me, until that night. I remember it was colder than usual and the streets were unusually empty. Even the stray dogs that usually hung around the dumpsters were gone. Everything felt too quiet. I brushed it off, adjusting my backpack as I cut through the old market road. That's when I first saw her, a girl, maybe 16 or 17. She was standing near a closed shop, her face half hidden by long black hair. She wore a thin, white dress, too thin for that kind of cold. She wasn't moving, just standing there, head tilted slightly down. At first, I thought she was waiting for someone. I didn't want to seem like a creep, so I kept walking. But as I passed her, something felt wrong. She didn't shiver, she didn't breathe, and her skin, what little I saw of it, looked pale, too pale. I sped up. When I glanced back, she was still there, still watching. I told myself she was just a weird kid or maybe someone playing a prank. But my heart was racing and I couldn't explain why. I tried to shake it off and kept walking. My building was only a few blocks away, and that's when I heard it. Footsteps. Light, soft footsteps, matching my pace perfectly. I froze for a second and the sound stopped. When I started walking again, the footsteps did too, always just behind me, never too close. I didn't dare turn around. By the time I reached my building's gate, my hands were shaking. I unlocked it as fast as I could and slipped inside, slamming the door shut behind me. I stood there in the darkness trying to catch my breath. It felt stupid, being so scared of a random girl. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Just as I was about to climb the stairs to my apartment, I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. Not footsteps this time, a soft tapping on the gate. I knew I shouldn't look. Every instinct in my body told me not to, but I did. She was there, standing on the other side, staring directly at me. But here's the thing, her face was wrong. Her eyes, they were too wide, too black, and her mouth, it was open like she was trying to say something but no sound came out. I bolted up the stair, 2 at a time. I didn't stop until I was inside my apartment with every lock secured. My heart was pounding so loudly, I could barely hear anything else. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Those empty black eyes, that mouth frozen in a silent scream. The next morning, I convinced myself it had been a dream. Maybe I was just overtired. Maybe I imagined the whole thing. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But then, things got worse. It started with small things. I would wake up and find my front door unlocked, even though I knew I locked it. My kitchen tap would be running, even though I never touched it. Once, I came home and found muddy footprints leading from the front door to my bedroom. I lived alone. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just stress. Maybe I was forgetting things. But deep down, I knew. She was still there, watching. A few nights later, I woke up around 3 a.m., feeling like someone was in the room with me. My skin was cold, and I could barely breathe. And then, I heard it. A whisper. Soft, broken, like someone struggling to speak. I couldn't understand the words, but I felt it, right next to my ear. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I just lay there, frozen in my bed until the sun came up. I couldn't live like that anymore. The fear was eating me alive. So, a week later, I packed my things and moved across town. I changed my number, deleted my social media. I did everything I could to disappear. And for a while, it worked. The strange noises stopped. The footsteps were gone. I thought I was free. Until last week. It was late again. I had stayed late at work, and by the time I left, the streets were quiet. I hadn't thought about her in years. I told myself it was all in my head. I was fine. But as I turned the corner to my new building, I saw something that made my blood turn cold. A girl, standing under a streetlight. Her hair was longer now. Her dress was torn and dirty. But I knew it was her. She didn't move, didn't speak, just tilted her head, slowly, like she was listening. I ran. I didn't stop until I was locked inside my apartment. I don't know what she wants. I don't even know if she's real. But now, every night around 3 a.m., I hear it again. That soft, broken whisper, closer this time. And last night when I woke up, my front door was open.